I've chosen Lord of the Flies by William Golding. I first read this when I was in high school. I won't tell you how long ago that was, but my 35th class reunion is next week. And it struck me then, and it had some meaning to me. Today, at the age I am now, it has a great bit more meaning. And if you've not read it, I encourage you to do so. Mr. Golding's book, The Lord of the Flies, looks like, as certainly when I first read it, as a really simple adventure story about boys on a desert island, but it's really so much more than that. And it's about really an analysis of the human being and how they operate in groups and how they operate individually. This is the very, very last part of the book, which really sums up why I chose it. The boys are about to be rescued. The officer inspected the little scarecrow in front of him. The kid needed a bath, a haircut, a nose wipe, and a good deal of ointment. Nobody killed, I hope? Any dead bodies, he asked. Only 2, and they've gone. The officer leaned down and looked closely at Ralph. 2? Killed? Ralph nodded again. Behind him, the whole island was shuddering with flame. The officer knew as a rule when people were telling the truth. He whistled softly. Other boys were appearing now. Tiny tots, some of them, brown with the distended bellies of small savages. One of them came close to the officer and looked up. But there was no more to come. Percival Wemyss Madison sought in his head for an incantation that had faded clean away. The officer turned back to Ralph. We'll take you off. How many of you are there? Ralph shook his head. The officer looked past him to the group of painted boys. Who's boss here? I am, said Ralph loudly. A little boy who wore the remains of an extraordinary black cap on his red hair and who carried the remains of a pair of spectacles at his waist started forward, then changed his mind and stood still. We saw your smoke, and you don't know how many of you there are? No, sir. I should have thought, said the officer as he visualized the search before him, I should have thought that a pack of British boys, you're all British, aren't you, would have been able to put up a better show than that. I mean, it was like that at first, said Ralph, before things... He stopped. We were together then. The officer nodded helpfully. I know, jolly good show, like the Coral Island. Ralph looked at him dumbly. For a moment he had a fleeting picture of the strange glamour that had once invested the beaches. But the island was scorched up like dead wood. Simon was dead, and Jack had... The tears began to flow, and sobs shook him. He gave himself up to them now for the first time on the island. Great shuddering spasms of grief that seemed to wrench his whole body. His voice rose under the black smoke before the burning wreckage of the island, and infected by that emotion, the other little boys began to shake and sob too. And in the middle of them, with filthy body, matted hair, and unwiped nose, Ralph wept for the end of innocence, the darkness of man's heart, and the fall through the air of the true wise friend called Piggy. The officer, surrounded by these noises, was moved and a little embarrassed. He turned away to give them time to pull themselves together and waited, allowing his eyes to rest on the trim cruiser in the distance. Thank you.